Alrighty, guys, welcome to our Monday live stream. I'm super excited today to be joined by John and Rebecca Bush, or Rebecca and John Bush. We weren't sure whose name should go first, from the Live Free Academy and Brave Botanicals. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. We are
So-
just keeping busy and having a beautiful, beautiful day. So thank you for having us on.
Chicken with our heads cut off.
Chickens with your head cut off. Yeah, nobody feels like that a few weeks before their event, do they?
Oh yeah.
No. It's all cool. Smooth sailing. You're cool as a cucumber right now.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, the Exit and Build Land Summit is coming in just a few weeks. Jack Spirko is going to be there. I'm going to be there. Who else is speaking of note? Like 30 other people are going to be there who are of note.
Yeah, with Curtis Stone's coming in all the way from Canada. That's really
Awesome.
exciting. And he's going to be sharing some tips on finding the perfect homestead and things to consider when you're looking at, raw land and what works best for growing food or deed restrictions for, having unique alternative structures and such and just living the alternative lifestyle. We have actually a really impressive speaker lineup. Ron Gibson's coming out. A lot of people in our movement have been begging us to get him because they're so fascinated by land patents and alloidal title. And there's also a really, really strong interest in private membership associations. So we're bringing out Mike Colomb. He'll be speaking on that. They're actually both putting on a workshop as well. The person who created the concept of Exit and Build, Derek Brose, will be joining us. And he actually just closed last week. He and Miriam closed on some land in Mexico. So
Hooray.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, I know. Me too. That was a big dream of theirs. And it's so cool to see things, manifest in the physical realm. Are there other speakers that come to mind that you are excited about?
We're going to have Jeff Lawton speak. We weren't able to get him in person. He's in Australia. Just didn't work out. But he's going to do a 2-hour virtual workshop. So he'll be teaching us some of his sustainability practices. Of course, he's a huge, probably the leading living legend of permaculture right now. Him and Paul Wheaton, of course, who spoke before and spoke at Self-Reliance Festival recently. But we're going to save plenty of time for Q&A. So if you want to pick the brains of arguably the most prolific permaculture mind alive today, everybody that participates with the virtual immersion pass or is there in person will have the opportunity to do that on Sunday.
Yeah, so no big deal, guys. Because in case you're wondering why you don't want to miss this event, you just heard why you don't want to miss this event. And the funny thing is the speakers are going to be fantastic, but the people you'll meet there who are not speakers are really the reason you should go. But I actually wanted to back up because you did your first Exit and Build Land Summit. This is your third one a few years ago. And I knew you, John, first, and then I got to know Rebecca. And I was writing the descriptions for today's show. I was like, the go-getter John. And then I was going to say the beautiful Rebecca. And I thought, everybody calls her beautiful. And she is. But what she really is accomplished. And when I say beautiful, I don't mean skin deep. I mean, yes, you are beautiful, but your person is beautiful. Your whole. But yeah, she's also a very accomplished person at setting out to do something, sticking to it, getting it done while empowering others around who are to take control of their lives. And I, at some point, Rebecca, I want to get just you on my show and interview you, but people are more familiar with John. So I thought I had to say something about you in the show. Anyway, so back then you were living in a tiny home, sort of more in the city. And now you're out on your own acreage and you've got off-grid stuff going on and you're growing food and you're building a marvelous community around you. So what made you decide to totally change your lifestyle and do that?
Well, at the time that we were living in the tiny home, we were trying to save up for the homestead. So this was a longtime goal of mine and John's. And, together we kind of had a short-term sacrifice, if you will, in order to save up. But really, it was very synergistic and in alignment with a lot of the things we were learning about and wanting to experience, because the tiny home was actually situated in an intentional community. It was an agrihood it's a neighborhood around agriculture. The center of it was a certified organic farm. And we were able to kind of learn from, that experience and take with it into our homesteading endeavor. So it wasn't such a huge undertaking when we first kind of returned to the land and moved to the country. But I was actually working at that tiny home community, and I helped, in many ways, I helped it kind of grow into what it is today. When I came along, there was, I think, 15 tiny homes that had sold. By the time I left, we had, there were 68 lots that were getting built out, and the newer phase had just sold out 22 lots, and there's 48 on the side where we lived. So it was an interesting 2 or 3 years working on that project, but kind of taking that experience and, you know, helping with the land development and the site plan and figuring out how to incorporate amenities and how to have edible landscaping and raised garden beds. That really helped make the 10-acre property that we live on now seem like not as big of an undertaking. And we've grown too with, you know, the community members, and that helps to be on the land with other people helping to steward the land. So we have a few friends, like two friends that live there with us now, our 2 kiddos. And then there's another friend that's moving out, and she's going to help us kind of, you know, take care of the land. And one of our other friends helps to mow and like helps with the chickens and helped us build the wicking beds. So it's definitely something that is less of an undertaking when you have people that you're working with and that you enjoy working with.
That makes sense. John, do you have anything to add to that whole lifestyle change?
Well, it just came with a lot of sacrifice. So there's a lot of people that put self-imposed limiting beliefs on the pursuit of the good life. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm glad that you're going to be speaking at the Land Summit, Nicole's. I think you have a really keen ability to help people identify those limiting beliefs and to overcome them. So that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. And that's one of the things that we had to recognize ourselves. So it's not like it was an easy path. We moved into this tiny home with Rebecca and I and our 2 kids there half the time. And it was a struggle. And there was plenty of times when we were completely losing our mind, because living in a tiny home, there's not really anywhere to escape to. You don't have your own space. Even if you're in the bedroom, it's just right next door to the living room, or the kids were right above us in the loft. So I just want to encourage people, if it is something that you want to do, to believe in your ability to get it done, and then to recognize that it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some struggle and adversity along the way. But if you are dedicated to making it happen, you'll be able to push through those struggles and ultimately reach your goal.
Yeah, limiting beliefs are surprising when you look back and realize, I used to think this thing. I realized a couple weeks ago that when I launched Hollow Roast Coffee, my limiting belief is I cannot ever possibly raise $20,000 to get the roaster I need. If today I was faced with, you need $20,000 for a business improvement, I wouldn't be thinking that. I'd be thinking, what am I going to do to raise that $20,000? And it was that belief that originally was in my way that eventually got out of my way. And there was no one thing that did it. I think one of the best things about what you guys do is you recognize that people who are ready to change still have those limiting beliefs. You don't judge them for it. You try to help them find pathways around it, because you can't just tell somebody, get rid of that limiting belief and you're done. Like, it's not like that.
Yeah.
So something you did on your homesteading in a budget webinar that I really liked was you told the stories of what you had to sacrifice to get where you are. And you gave people tangible steps they could take to start building what they needed to build, no matter if they had, $10,000 extra a month or not, or whatever that number is that they think they need. And I think when people start doing that, that is the first step towards finding a way around a limiting belief. So it's really cool to hear you talk about those in that simple of a term, because a lot of, I just got done with my annual spring workshop here, which is, it's kind of like Jack's. It's 3 days and about 65 people come here. And we have had about half the room a little stuck behind poverty mindset. And we always get the same question, like, if I'm in debt, what do I do?
Yeah.
Have you guys been in debt before and had to deal with it?
Yep.
Yeah,
I think Becca struggled with it a little more, just the whole concept.
In the tiny home, though, we were able to like really cut down on things and not be in debt and actually go up above to get the down payment we needed. But now it's like once you acquire property and you're a homeowner, you're just going to have to accept the fact that debt is part of owning a home. Like, oh, the shower, what's it called, frame just cracked. Oh, now we need to go replace all the windows. Oh, the water heater busted. And so having access to capital, I think, depending on how you look at it, is a benefit, because then you can invest back into this asset that you have, the land that you have. But oh my gosh, yeah, that's for sure part of it. And it's like definitely a mindset. But yeah, I was a little bit like,
she freak out about the credit card debt.
Like, she's like, don't, if you don't have money for the couch, you don't buy the couch. That's how I was raised, like very strict with funds. But then we started to get into like Grant Cardone, who was the opposite of Dave Ramsey. And he's like, hey, why not use the bank's money? They're all assholes anyway. They're all jerks and, scheming the system. Like, why would you not get in on that game to your benefit so that you can build wealth, generational wealth? And through real estate is really, my opinion, a great way to do that.
I think it's a mindset shift. So, there's been times when business slowed and we leaned into the credit card a little bit more, and there's anxiety around the interest. But the way that I see it, it's just the price that you pay for having access to money when you need it. And if you see it as some big burden or some prison, then you're going to have anxiety and you're in a scarcity place, and it's only going to manifest more scarcity and more lack. But if you're just like, it's just a tool, sometimes we use that tool to our advantage, and we always do our best to pay that back down so we're not caught in this never-ending cycle of debt and interest. But I think a lot of people just get caught in their head and it turns into this negative thing. And really what's more important and what we should focus more of our energy on than the debt or paying off the debt is, how can I bring in more money to make the debt less relevant, I think is the key thing. Everybody focuses on how can I spend less, how can I budget more, where can I cut, when the focus should be on how can I make more money by providing more value to more people.
Unless you're spending it on crack and hookers.
Well, ideally, we shift our lifestyle so we're not spending money on stupid, fancy luxuries and really expensive watches and all this stuff, which obviously people in our audience don't really do. But another good debt too is investing in something that's going to help you to make more money. So, like yourself, for sure, online courses or tools for your business to help bring in more money. There's no problem there. And Grant Cardone, who we both subscribe to substantially, he's like, I want to have so much freaking debt that I myself become too big to fail. And if there's some problem, the bank is going to step in and help me, because if I go down, the banks are going to go down too. And it's just kind of like thinking that's just kind of like, whoa, that's the next level.
That is next level. Now, before we hopped on, we were chatting a little bit about events and getting ready for events and coordinating events. And you're like, yeah, we should share some of our struggles going into Exit and Build Land Summit. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people see these events that you do and they're like, it's so easy because you make it look so easy. Now, let's be honest here. Is it easy?
No.
It's a labor of love.
It's hard as hell. It's a total pain in the ass, to be honest.
Obviously this is stressful. This is a lot of, it's just, to me, it's like a design. It's like we're designing this experience, this opportunity to bring people together, not only to learn and connect with one another, but more importantly, to build long-lasting relationships that will help us achieve our goals and do so faster. Like, if we can all learn from one another and cut through a lot of the mistakes and, kind of catapult our projects, then to me, all of the hard work putting these events on is worth it. But we are very fortunate because we have a really great support network. We have a wonderful Freedom Cell Network community here in Central Texas, and many of the people in our network have helped us so much to put things on. Like, we're able to lean on friends who are really good at registration, or lean on friends who are beautiful decorators and can make the VIP room feel and look so special. And we have like a chef that works with us in the local farms to, source the food and make things affordable and feasible. And he, likes us a lot, and it's a lot of work, but at the same time, we have a really good support network here in Central Texas, so that makes it a little bit less stressful.
So we're sitting here. We're about 2.5 weeks away right now, right?
Yes.
What's
I'm
the
gonna
real
step aside.
dirt?
We have two little Rugrats dogs, not kids next door. I'll be right back.
That's okay. Rebecca, what's the
I'm
real
getting
dirt?
excited,
Like,
too.
what are the things that you're like, oh man, it might not come together? Is there anything like that right now?
Well, there's always the like last minute like cool speakers who end up reaching out and like, wait, can I present? Can I speak? And we're like, we're 3 weeks away.
Like, where were you 6 months ago?
Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't really say that. I think that all in all, a lot of folks are really passionate about this exit and build movement and about homesteading. And there's so much momentum in this space. And, really what we're doing is to help facilitate, bringing it all together. And I think that it's been really, all in all, a very, very successful, like, folks want to be involved. Like, we reach out to folks to see if they'll, present or speak or come to the event. And we are like Michael Reynolds, for instance, he's coming. He's like the father of earth chips, like amazing bioarchitect. Cool. Yeah. And people, I think, have seen what we've done in the past. And when they like get a glimpse of that or a taste for that, they're like, yes, I want to be involved. So it's actually been pretty smooth sailing in terms of like getting the speakers and all of that. But yeah.
What's that look, John?
I will say, here, will you take this down? I'm not a big.
We have a third person on the live stream for those of you who get audio only, and it's a canine, Agora.
Watch the microphone. Becca likes to point her microphone down.
The dog is now blocking the mic of Rebecca. There we go.
I distinctly remember when we were organizing the Greater Reset, which took place earlier this January.
Yeah.
It was extremely stressful, and one key differentiator between extreme stress and manageable stress, or as Tim Ferriss calls it, stress, which is like a positive stress that helps to motivate you and kick your butt into action, was it is when the money's flowing in, right? So with the Greater Reset, it's more, we're not going to do it like this next time, but it's a community kind of thing. We don't have a paid live stream. So it's just an in-person event, and there's only so many tickets that we can sell. And I remember being real stressed out when the ticket sales were slow, and we were kind of like, oh man, is this going to be a success? We're going to be able to pack the place. And so not only do you have the normal stressors of putting the event on and getting everything together, but on top of that, when you're like, dang, we got a bunch of people to pay, we got a lot of overhead, we got to pay for all the flights to come in, and the money is streaming in slowly. That's when me personally, I'm even more stressed and anxious. But thankfully, people like to wait till the last minute, and we have all these clever marketing strategies to spur people into action. So once the money spigot starts flowing a little bit more, I realize like a noticeable difference in me being stressed. But one thing back to the mindset piece is through it all, even through the land summit, when there's like dips and such with the ticket sales, and we all know that at the end of the day, we're going to pack the house. We do it every single time, and we just stay with that certainty. Something I learned from Tony Robbins, you just be certain about what it is that you want in life, and it really increases the likelihood of manifesting it.
Yeah, I had that same experience this year where for SRF that my ticket sales were kind of like, usually people buy them all before early bird because then the price goes up. This is why we do early bird, so that we have an idea of how many people we're planning for. And it was just sort of, it was not bad, but I thought, like you always want to be growing or you're dying, right? So I think what was going on was money anxiety, not that people didn't have money, but what is the world going to do money anxiety? And so in the last 2 weeks, it was like a rocket took off.
Yeah.
And that had never happened before on any event I've done. It's always most people buy in advance. And I think part of that is a mentality change that people were just being hit by, the economic instability that they're seeing. And we're just like, I'm going to wait before I okay, well, I'm not broke yet. So I'm going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely heavy inflation right now. And there's less, leisurely spending, and it's been a little tight this year, I think, for everyone. An
Yeah,
interesting
but
time we're living
you're
in right now.
you're bringing so much value with this event. I've seen the food. First of all, I've seen what you serve for lunch. And that's not your daddy's like conference food lunch. That is an awesome lunch. And it's healthy. You have multiple choices that meet various dietary needs, which you and I all know that's really hard to accommodate because you've got
Yep.
the ketos and the vegans and they're
Vegans,
polar opposites, right?
carnivores, gluten-free. Oh yeah.
Yeah, dairy-free, all of it. And that costs money to do, and to do it on a large scale well, like you do. Like, I'm like, oh, you have a chef on board. Now I understand how you do that, because I was never sure how I was like, well, this is amazing. I wish I had a caterer in my area that I have to bring a chef in too, by the way, to get that done. And your ticket price is pretty low. Like, how much is it right now?
$297.
$297. For how many days?
Friday to $337 though.
Yeah, if you don't get your ticket by Friday, guys, it goes up $100. And how many days is that?
It's $297 right now. It goes up to $337.
Oh, I'm sorry, $297 to $337.
There's a VIP ticket too, which we do like the VIP aspect because we put on this really fun farm to table dinner, like a sunset dinner. And so that is always really nice. And there's like a little lounge, and we serve hollow roast coffee, of course. Best of the best.
I'm roasting that on Monday next week.
Yay! Yeah, we're so glad that you're involved. I love too having the coffee booth. It's like we call it the Spike Up Bar at our events. So we have your hollow roast coffee, then the kratom for Brave Botanicals.
Yep.
Everybody's all jacked up, high on life.
Lots
High
of
on life.
good vibes, high vibes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the pain. Like, do you see problems coming in the future, in the next few months, in our economy, in our society, in the world? Like, what are you seeing out there based on what's happened this year?
Well, we went to see Del Bigtree's film last week. And while we were there, they like serve a nice brunch and everything before they start filming. One of the ladies that was on a show, unfortunately, her name escapes me, but she's a doctor. And she was explaining to us that there's a lot of livestock getting injected with the mRNA vaccines now. And she was saying that they can analyze the stool and see how it's impacting their stool samples. So it's kind of strange to think like now when you go to the grocery store, there's this other conspiracy or pictures of this A-peel label where they spray the produce and it, now it can last 3 weeks longer or whatever. But the chemical they spray it with is like not good to digest and it doesn't wash off. So there's like, I think this new urgency to grow your own food or at least know where you're getting your food from like never before. And that's not to scare people, but to say like, it's always been good to have grass-fed beef and organic food and using heirloom seeds and non-GMO. Of course, we all know this, but now it seems like there's a whole other level of let's get to know our local cattle ranchers. Let's get to know our local farmers and make sure that we know the source of our food because it could be poisoning us. So that's been interesting, a new sense of urgency this year that we've been kind of hit with. Mm-hmm. That's kind of scary, but
I'm kind of desensitized to all of the economic stuff because I've been waiting for the bottom to drop out since 2006 and it never completely has. There's been little dips and spats of uncertainty. And of course, people have been hurt and there's been financial trouble here and there. But I think the more likely scenario than a total economic collapse type situation is a slow, gradual transition to the Great Reset. I think that's what's going to take place. It's just going to slowly but surely rotate and move and shift the pieces to where people that are living in cities especially are going to experience more surveillance, more controls, more climate type mechanisms in place, and then controlling their movement and all that stuff. So I don't know that there's going to be some big economic crash, but either way, whether there is or there isn't, we want to make preparations. And one thing I always focus on is like the homestead life, knowing your neighbors, growing your own food, getting your beef from the local cattle rancher that literally lives right down the street and the cattle ranch is 20 minutes away. That's a better way to live anyway. So regardless of I think it's better to just resonate from a space of this is the lifestyle I want to live, rather than this reactionary, like, I'm freaking out, I got to do all this stuff. And I know that's why I like about the Spirko crew, Nicole crew, the stuff y'all do with SRF. It's like this enlightened survivalism. It's not this freak out, edgy. Although a lot of people that come into y'all's audience, I'm sure, are like that, but they listen long enough and they're kind of like, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's funny because I hear a lot, when people first wake up and they see, my whole life I thought the world worked the way they want us to think. We are programmed to think it works, basically, from the time we're born. And they start seeing things and they're like, that's not what I thought. Well, and that's not what I thought. And then they're like, oh crap, this is scary. That's when I get the email, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll come across my podcast, or they'll come across your Freedom Cell networks. Like, we have a Freedom Cell here as well. They'll pop into the Freedom Cell, and the things they're scared about right now is economic collapse, CBDCs, and surveillance. And so they're asking, where can I go that doesn't have any 5G towers? And the answer in Tennessee is, I don't know anywhere you can go where there's no 5G towers. They're coming in everywhere. And so there are more of that sort of thing in highly populated areas. There's more surveillance in highly populated areas. The smart cities have been being implemented for a long time. And I've had my eyes open to that whole movement since I grew up in Oregon for a very long time. Because Agenda 2030 was Agenda 2020. And before that, it just sort of started with land use planning and zoning.
Yeah.
And it's always like 20 years out, we're going to do this magical thing where you can live and work and only walk everywhere, and it's all going to be glorious, completely ignoring that people are going to work where they get the job, whether it's within walkable distance or not. Completely ignoring that relationships happen organically, and sometimes your relationships are with people who are hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. Completely ignoring with how humans actually work. And they just sort of get their camel's nose under the thing. But I think you were right on. I don't think we're not looking at, in my opinion, this is totally opinion, we're not looking at a crash coming in 6 months. And there's going to be this moment where we saw it all happen. Hyperinflation happened from 1 week to the next. We all went into the caveman times because of it, right?
I hope that doesn't happen.
Right. I mean, if that does happen, then, like saving 2 extra cans of beans or something isn't it like that just delays the fact that I have to deal with a whole new reality.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been keeping up with CJ Kilmer much from the Dangerous History podcast, but he's done a whole series on the rise and fall of empires and sort of analyzing transitions that empires that are ending do. And there's a lot of signs in our current culture that point towards the empire is crashing. It's just sort of, it's gone through its natural organic process. And most empires, when they crash, don't in fact have that big event. They just, like, some chaos occurs and they are no longer in power.
Yep.
And
a lot of it has to do with the reserve currency. Ray Dalio has this awesome book about World Order 2. I forget what it's called, Changing World Order or something like that. But he shows all these curves from the Dutch and the British and the United States. And there's this curve, predictable curve. And there's all these different characteristics. And on the way up, there's increase in productivity, greater mobility, greater education, innovation. The government's in alignment with the people. And then it peaks out. And a lot of it has to do with the debt and the debasement of the currency.
Yeah.
And each one of those empires also had the global reserve currency at the time. And so the next empire that's on the incline is China, right? But I don't know that it's necessarily going to be China. I think it's going to be this DNC, deep state, great reset, technocratic thing, a conglomeration of like a global type deal, which is how it's going to shift, which is weird because it's a challenge because traditionally you'd have political actors within a country that are vying for political power for their nation state. But now we have these traitors, so to speak, I'm not a big patriot guy, although I appreciate this country and the freedom that we have relative to other places. But it's like this new diabolical scheme where they don't even care about the national sovereignty. In fact, that's what they're trying to erode. But yeah, I'll have to check out some of CJ's work on that front, because it is rather telling and all the telltale signs are there. So for people to ignore it, they're shooting themselves in the foot. And I've been trying to bang on my family for the longest time about de-dollarization. And the funny thing is, I don't know, I thought that maybe they'd have a little more respect for me after all the COVID stuff, because, you know, right off the bat,
because you know,
immediate. Yeah, it wasn't immediate, but we nailed all the stuff. The vaccines are going to cause more harm than good. There goes the YouTube feed. The masks are BS. Avoid all this and that, right? And then it, like, all of that panned out. It just took a little bit of time. And I've been saying the same thing about the economy too. It's like the dollar is no longer going to be the global reserve currency at some point. And if all your assets that you worked your entire life for are all based in the stock market and they're all dollar-backed based assets, you're going to be in a world of hurt. And I don't want to see that for my family. Like, we're on the come up, you know, still trying to build and establish wealth for ourselves. And we're doing it through food production, land, Bitcoin, right? Investing in our business, investing in ourselves, not all this funny nonsense gambling, Wall Street casino. But my family, like, some of them are successful and they work their entire lives. And I'd hate to see them hurt because they put so much faith in the dollar, you know, but it's coming for sure.
In the 70s, my grandparents' entire retirement, because they were retired, was cut in half, like within a year.
Yeah.
Well, because of inflation, right?
Yeah.
And having seen that and seeing how we are positioned now, that is a very real risk again. And so, like, I'm watching my dad retire thinking, you know, in a year or two, because of inflation, he could have half of what he has, even though he quote unquote has the same amount.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and okay, so what are we going to do if that happens? Like, the cool thing about having a family is you can have a group discussion about that, right?
Yeah.
But it is interesting watching people just sort of fingers in ears, la, 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 right?
It's just easy. I think people, for one, their ego gets in the way and they don't want to feel as though they've made poor decisions their entire life. And it's not that they've made poor decisions. I mean, people live good lives and have nice experiences and they cash out this, or they're, you know, the mutual fund's doing well. But I think the other piece is, like, there's an intellectual laziness, and there's also this tendency to doubt what we don't understand, the new and the innovative. But that's another thing, to go back to Grant Cardone. He has this thing where he's like, the middle class, it used to be this thing people strove towards, but now, you know, you start making a decent salary and you become even more insecure, or you even start to push outside of the middle class, and now you're trying to protect what you have. But one thing that he says that really stuck with me was that a lot of our parents and a lot of people in our family, they may not have provided for themselves adequately or prepared adequately, and maybe the retirement accounts start to fail, or Social Security ends up going bust because it's a big Ponzi scheme. And so he really encourages people to be as wealthy as possible and to produce as much money as possible, because we may need to take care of those around us. And I would hate to see our family suffer. And they did so, you know, my parents did so damn much for me. I'd like to return the favor. That's why the homestead thing's so important too, because it's like, ultimately, I realized, because I started Live Free Academy April 2021. Before that, I was doing the Kratom thing. And, you know, it started to slowly build, but it was like a really slow incline of growth, right? And then I did this crypto workshop, and it was like, oh my God, I've just tapped into this incredible niche. And so for the longest time, I was just putting my money back into the business and then buying some Bitcoin here and there. But then when all that food shortage and inflation stuff started popping off, I realized, like, I need to be taking some of this excess money and putting it into food production systems, so we can provide for ourselves if crap hits the fan. And I think, you know, we don't have to all necessarily be dollar rich, but we need to be capable of taking care of our loved ones in the event that we have to, and the bottom drops out, or they lose half of their wealth because of some stupid Wall Street nonsense or some Federal Reserve chicanery. So that's kind of where I'm at too. It's like, it's not like number go up just with Bitcoin. It's like, what can we do in order to be prepared, but also to support our family, and to take it a step further, how can we be beacons of support for our community as well?
Yeah, I think I like to think about different aspects of my life within terms of regeneration. You know, you regenerate the skin on your face when you're too dry in the winter by putting face cream on it. Well, how do I regenerate that face cream supply? I buy it at the store or I learn how to make it from things here. And I think about that on the homestead, like food regeneration. When I've realized what my dietary needs are and those of our community, that has set what kinds of food are raised on the homestead. But then how do I do that without bringing outside inputs in for those food things that we're growing here? It's like one more step of regeneration at a time. The same goes with business, right? How do you regenerate, you know, the ability to provide your product, whether or not, you know, you can order, like for me, it's coffee bags. What am I going to do if I can't get plastic coffee bags anymore? Because that, well, like right now I have a huge surplus, but I would have to send it. I'd have to package it different. Or how do I regenerate new relationships as people get old and die and stop being customers? I think when we start thinking of our lifestyle as a regenerative life, and don't think about regenerating everything at one time. Like start with one thing. Just nail that one thing. If it's your eggs, first start with the chickens and the eggs, right? I don't know which one you need to start with first. That's up to you. But
I always wondered which one comes first.
But regeneration is not limited to homestead. There's everything in your life can enter into your, how am I nurturing this so that it's regenerating so that we don't have to worry about it? And that includes nurturing the people around you so that they're in that same state, because we all run into problems and then we really need each other.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something I've just been playing with a lot as I really evaluate my homestead. I don't want to work for my home. I want my home to work for me.
Yeah.
That's what I consider a homestead. And so I just think like, how is this working for me? Whether it's just like, I can sit under Taj Mahal right now and have a cup of coffee in the morning and it's beautiful. And at this time of year, it's not too hot yet out there. It's about to be. And I can listen to the water of my aquaponics system and I can go pick lettuce. And I know that sounds like a crazy romanticized dream for some people, but I've been here 15 years doing one thing at a time to get here.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed the journey most of the way. So, you know, it takes some work, but it's more regenerative now. So that's just, I don't know, that's things I play with. Okay. So you're impassioned to create wealth in your life. And, you know, I always hear Jack saying like, if hard times come, isn't it better to go into hard times with millions of dollars so that it's easier to deal with hard times, whether or not the money is devalued? Because $3 million cut down to $1.5 million feels a whole lot better than $10,000 cut down to $5,000 in value.
Yep.
You have put so much into developing communities, not only in Texas, but all over the world through the Freedom Cells, into equipping as many people as you can with next steps for what they need to do, which is different for everybody. Next steps for what they need to do. Why do you do that? Because you don't have to do that. You could just build your wealth for you and your family and your immediate community and not undertake something as stressful and awesome as the Exit and Build Land Summit. Like, why do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, money's a motivator, of course, that's part of it, but it's more so like fulfillment and doing what, you know, we're both passionate about and what we feel called to do, and also leaving systemic long-term change that will have a positive benefit, you know, 7 generations to come, as Derek Rose says.
I always, like, my initial gut response is like for my kids, but then I'm like, well, I was so dedicated and motivated before I even had kids, or before I even thought about having kids. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I think there's a part of it that's like it's so diabolical what these a-holes are doing to people that it makes me angry. And I'm not an angry person nowadays. Well, sometimes.
No.
Just a little bit.
Everybody
Definitely
gets
not
mad
necessarily.
sometimes.
But it's just like, oh my God, these treacherous people. And then, you know, there could be so much beauty in the world, like that little cute dog right here.
There he is.
There's that cute dog.
There's a cutie.
Sorry, I got this nice sophisticated little camera, little switcher thing.
Yeah.
We're gearing up for the Land Summit, so I like to play with the toys. Anyway, it's like an anger, and it's kind of like I want to beat these clowns, and these people think that they have authority over others, and they have this diabolical, treacherous conspiracy, and it's this secret thing. And it's like, you know what? F you guys. We are going to overcome your agenda. And in fact, you guys are giving us the push and the energy and the momentum to create a better world. Whereas before, people would have just been ignorant and just gone along to get along. There may be a little bit of ego mixed in too, because it's like, this is something that I did well. I was able to understand this agenda early on back in 2002 and just kind of figured it out. And it felt good to share with people. But I think ultimately, like, all this stuff has like a compounding multiplier effect where it just feels good to be able to present something to someone and then be like, wow, you know, I think the same way too. But honestly, I thought that I was all alone. Mm-hmm. And then I have this ability, because we've been experimenting with artificial intelligence over here. I'm experimenting with ChatGPT.
Me into this drama.
Anyway, and like, it interestingly enough, ChatGPT is familiar with my work, and it's like, I was like, so what is this, the voice and the tone of John Bush? What is John Bush's speaking and writing style? And one of the things it said is like that I speak authoritatively. And that's something that I always resonated, because early on, talking about 9/11 truth and all these kooky conspiracies, I was able to speak it as though it's the truth without this weird, like some weird kooky kind of tinfoil thing. It was just like, no, man, this building 7 collapsed in 6.5 seconds. And that's very peculiar that a building that wasn't hit by any planes and was very structurally intact would do such a thing. What's up with that? And so I think there's just like this feedback loop of people being like, feeling grateful that there's someone else speaking their language. They don't have to feel alone and isolated. I think that just kind of sprung up. I don't know, there's a whole lot of competing factors, but I think as of late, having lived in poverty, like extreme poverty for a while, and having kids through that poverty, it was something I was like, I'm never, ever, ever going to do that again. And I think that pushed me to the extreme of wanting to build wealth. And then now there's this wonderful thing that takes place with more people should tap into. It's like when you're impact driven and your like work is built on like a heart-centered wanting to help people and help humanity and help your community. And then you offer goods and services that help that. And then when you start to find success by fulfilling that and helping people, the more money you make, the more impact you have. And the more impact you have, the more people appreciate you and the more money you can make. It just totally has this cyclical effect. And that's the beauty of having a line of work that's also activism. Is just so harmonious. I feel really blessed, but it's not like it just happened at random. It was a lot of hard work that got us to this point.
Yeah, I always love asking the backstory on how people who have accomplished success in their life got there, because a lot of people become aware of you when you are successful for the first time, and they did not see that time you weren't sure you could pay your power bill, or you thought you might be kicked out of a house, or you were going to lose it all and go live in a tent, or whatever that thing is, or you were sick and couldn't afford to go to the doctor, or whatever those things were that made you realize, well, this is never happening to me again. I mean, there's a couple responses to that kind of a situation. You can give up, become chemically dependent on something to dull the pain and just fizzle out, or you can figure out what your next step is and take it, and from there figure out your next step. And there's always this story, and you have it too with the Kratom company, right, where stuff in bags of Kratom in the middle of the night to get the orders out, because whoops, I just sold a whole, which is great. But you could have had that.
When we first started dating, I recruited her to stay up all night with me and help package.
This is true. And I was calling.
It's a marriage made in heaven.
Thankfully, we're well past that now.
Yeah.
It was the manure needed for the beautiful flower to bloom.
Yeah. But I don't think I've met anybody who didn't end up in that place who is what I'm going to call like generation one self-made. There's like this moment where sleep is lost and you're like not sure what's going to happen, or you had to take a risk that could have meant losing your house or whatever. I mean, your house, your car, all of your money. And I think, I think people have a hard time. It's like, I want to be successful. I want to be an entrepreneur, and I want to risk nothing to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a thing?
No.
Yeah.
No, the risk is part of the definition of entrepreneur. I think it's like someone could start a business and like do some, simple risk-free thing, but being an entrepreneur means putting some skin in the game and taking risks and making calculated risks for an anticipated profit. So you definitely have to I've been wanting to make more risks and like take on a big line of credit and expand and grow. And that's another thing I learned from Grant. He basically stayed static until he started investing millions of dollars in online social media advertising. That's what helped to get him this giant platform that he has today. But yeah, you got to take risks. What is it? Thomas Paine said, the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph, and that which we obtain too lightly, we esteem too cheaply. So I think about that a lot in the position that we're in. And it's not like we're like rolling in the dough or anything. We have debt and stuff, and we have a normal life, but we have the freedom to have life design. And of course, I did an interview with Richard Grove or with Joshua for Autonomy Unlimited, and he was like, "So tell me about the freedom of being an entrepreneur. How is it so amazing?" And it was at a point it was like probably like 3 months ago or 4 months ago where I was like really burnt out. And there were some conflicts we were having within the company, trying to sort some stuff out. And I just gave him the vulnerable answer, like, to be honest, it's a blessing and a curse. And sometimes it's a burden. And sometimes I miss like being an employee.
9 to 5,
you turn it off and go veg
off.
out. But me, like, I have trouble sleeping, thinking about what we're going to do for the next piece or how we're going to solve this team issue or whatever. So, it's a blessing and a curse, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I often share my story of being in total poverty and having the electricity turned off. And we didn't go move into a tent, but we moved into this busted converted school bus and lived in there with 2 kids. And it was like rusted out, holes. For a little while, we were pissing and crapping and a little. Well, it helps to illustrate the point because all these people are like, well, sure, you could do it. And you have this big following and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, it wasn't that long ago. I was down in the dumps as well. So anybody, no matter what place you are in today, it all first starts with changing your mindset and believing that you can work through it, right? So, yeah.
Believe you can, and you're halfway there.
And then with this anti-fragile thing, sometimes the worse off you can leverage that adversity to make it even stronger. All these great, like Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins. I know you're a big fan. I've referred to you as the female homestead Tony Robbins. Because at the last Land Summit, you got everybody up and you're like, what kind of business could you start? And they're like, I don't know. I don't think I could. And you're like, well, what are you good at? And they said something, you're like, there's your business. And they're like, oh my God. It was one of these Tony Robbins interventions. But that dude had a terrible upbringing with like an abusive mother and multiple abusive stepfathers and all sorts of stuff. Oprah Winfrey has a horror story of a childhood as well. And so if you can step into that space of empowerment and get out of the victimhood, you can leverage that as fuel for your fire to become even stronger and greater than before. Cardone talks about assets and liabilities. And oftentimes our assets are a liability, like being born into riches and luxury. That may be seen as an asset, but ultimately it's a liability because you never learn how to work hard, Just the same, a liability, mental handicap, physical handicap, poverty, struggle, abusive parent or whatever, that can be turned into an asset if you're able to leverage it to help push you and motivate you. Yep,
that is 100% true. And a lot of people don't realize how talented they are. Yeah. And I mean, that's why I do that a lot, is there's always somebody who's like, I couldn't ever turn my most recent one. I was like, well, what was your job? Well, I painted signs. How many people here have a business and need a sign painted? She's like, well, they couldn't afford me. I'm like, you don't know that till you ask.
Yeah, exactly. Put yourself out there. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. And then somebody said they went up to her and hired her to paint a sign that day.
I love that. We're mixing in maybe there's 3 of them or so throughout the weekend, but they're called empowerment sessions. And so I want you and me and Jack. Richard Grove's going to be joining us too, but he may just be doing a 30-minute talk. I'm not sure he can join us throughout the whole event, but I want to just like get people up on stage and just say like, raise your hand. What are your struggles? What's holding you back from buying that piece of property or whatever? And then we kind of break it down because I think it's real instructive for people to watch and resonate with that.
Cool. I think that's going to be awesome. Well, let's wrap up. We're coming in on an hour here, and I want to spend the last little bit talking about the Exit and Build Land Summit. And are you doing digital tickets?
Yes, there's a virtual immersion pass. It's at exitandbuildlandsummit.com. So on the website, you can watch for free if you register. It's for free the first day and a half. However, we are doing a power networking, community matchmaking. It's like a virtual for the virtual registrants to connect like, oh, I'm doing this in Vermont or I'm doing this in Texas. And we'll put you in different breakout rooms, which the lady facilitating that, Cynthia Tina, she has a company called Community Finders. She uses a special software for that. So it'll be very organized, more sophisticated than Zoom. And then on day 3, it is more of the work. There's a free element, and then there's also a paid element because those are more in depth and, you know, a little bit more interactive. And so that's going to be Saturday night and Sunday, the whole day.
Yeah, so we try to make it accessible with this free pass. So you can watch tons of content. Curtis Stone's going to be presenting Friday. He's flying down from Canada, so we're really excited to have him. So if you just sign up for free, you're going to get tons of value. You're going to get a lot of empowerment, lots of strategies. And then if you can't come in person, this virtual immersion pass is definitely going to blow you away. That's where you get to watch all 3 days, like Rebecca said, and you get to ask questions. So we'll pull you up on screen. You can ask questions directly of the speakers. And then folks, if you got the chance to come down, I know it's a squeeze for somebody, but it's just going to be such an incredible experience to be around those people. And like Nicole said, the networking is absolutely invaluable. Ryan, so this wasn't the Exit and Build Land Summit, it was the Greater Reset. It was one of our events. Ryan, who's our vice president of sales here at Live Free Academy, he met his girlfriend. They're like all into each other and all ooey gooey. They met at the Greater Reset. So it's really cool to get around.
Find the love of your life at the Land Summit.
Yeah.
You never know.
That's right. That's right.
It's cool to get around like-minded people. It just really fills your cup, so to speak.
And there's also renting out an Airbnb,
and if
you like rent a room and stuff. So you can
there's ways to do it on the cheap as well for folks. Like there's some people that were on the fence or they bought a ticket and they were like, I got to refund my ticket. I'm just not able to make it work. Give us a call. So contact us at helpdesk@livefree.academy, helpdesk@livefree.academy. But make sure you click through Nicole's links that she's going to share there. And then you can get on the phone with Ryan. And Ryan was literally like, hey, you know, there's a few people that are looking for that have an extra bed in this big Airbnb, and the cost was like really low. So, you know, you drive down.
Telegram group for like logistics and stuff. So
you can totally. Right. Airbnbs are not expensive there, and then you can pack 10 people in some of them.
Yeah. It was like $100 for all 4 nights. So
just come on. There's RV parks in the area and stuff too.
So I think one of the things that happens is, you know, you want to change something. Okay. And the first step to taking that change is making the decision to do something. There's my link, by the way, everybody. But just buy your ticket. If you don't use my link, it's fine. You make the decision to go to something like this. And it may feel like a stretch to do $297. But when you make that decision with your money and your time, and you go in person, even if you have to drive from a few states away. I met people there who originated in Germany last time. So if you can't get there, right?
Refugees.
When you make that decision, you have just chosen, instead of accepting the status quo, instead of letting your life be lived for you by the programming that was put in you by our society, you've made the decision to try something new. And that does not mean you leave the Exit and Build Land Summit at that moment and your whole life is different on Tuesday. but you'll have a better idea of what to do next. And when you do that, you'll have a better idea of what to do next. And you'll have an opportunity at some point put in front of you that you may not have seen as an opportunity, that is suddenly an opportunity. Because the one thing I realize is the opportunities happen every day. Like, I had 4 opportunities come my way today, the day I should have been taking off because it was the day after my event. And I'm like, nope. One of those opportunities is I'm getting John and Rebecca on my podcast. We're going to talk about prosperity mindset, because everybody should consider getting rid of the I can't perspective and start saying, how can I?
Mm-hmm.
When you get around a bunch of people who want to do that, it's amazing. And when we've been diving in on how to fix the poverty mindset, the fastest ways to get rid of the toxic people in your life, even if you're related to them, cut them out and start hanging out with prosperity people. So I mean, I'm excited about the speakers you have. I get to meet people I've never met before, who I've always wanted to meet, but really, it's your attendees who are most important to me.
That's right.
Just from a meeting them standpoint.
Yeah.
Last year we had somebody write a poem during my session. You remember that? And it was awesome. I don't know what she's done. I hope she's here next time, but like, she wrote a poem about the session and about the summit.
Yeah.
And she's like, she was one of the people who's like, I don't have a skill. And she's like, I guess I could write poetry.
There you go.
And it was beautiful.
I love it. Yeah,
Um,
I encourage people not to see the $297, or if you just buy the virtual pass, the $127 as an expense, see it as an investment. And you know, one thing I learned too is like, we can play tricks on our mind and like fool our own mind into thinking this way or that, because more often than not, we trick our mind into thinking less of ourselves and to being our own worst enemy. And there's no reason why we can't do the same thing, but the opposite effect. And it's had a world of difference on my quality of life and my ability to accomplish my goals and live a good life and attract this incredible woman whom I love so much and get this little cute little dog there, little Agora. So just try to flip the way that you look at it. You're not losing something. You're gaining something. And you're gaining something that's worth a heck of a lot more than the $297 ticket and the flight. You're going to gain friends. You're going to gain experiences. You're going to be cracked open and be so motivated and empowered on the flip side. It is going to be the start of a new journey for yourself. And of course, like you said, you don't just come to the event and then your whole life changes. You're going to have to put in some work. But this is going to be a solid motivation and push to accelerate that path and to shift the trajectory that your life may be on. The whole event is like consciously architected to crack you wide open and give you a swift kick in the pants.
The first half of Friday is all about mindset and empowerment. And we even have Jesse Elder. I don't know if he likes to be called a life coach, but
I don't think people like that term.
Success coaching. And, he escaped the city and bought Freedom Farms out in the country.
Yeah.
And
we bought half a pig from him for a bit with Bitcoin.
He's not only living the lifestyle himself of Exit and Build, but he also helps people to understand, what steps do I actually have to take in order to make this happen. And that's basically what his whole presentation will be about, is like, let's really narrow in on focus on what we need to do, practical action steps in order to exit the city and build a homestead in the country.
We just added the schedule down to the bottom there.
So it's May 18th through 22nd in Bastrop, Texas, which is not far from Austin. That's where I'm flying to.
Yep, 30 minutes east.
And the schedule is up now. I bring the in-person thing because I see people participating digitally, and I think that's helpful, and they make great relationships. And then when you meet people in person, it's like a whole different accelerator that you run into. It's like, it's a giant, accelerator of progress for you. And then next thing you know, it's the thing that happened. It's the person you talked to in the hallway getting your cup of coffee or your kratom that has changed your life. I've seen people start businesses after things like this, and the next year they come back as a sponsor with a booth. Yeah. And that when they arrived the first time, they had put everything into getting themselves there and getting it done and getting some time off work. Now they work for themselves and they're paying to be a vendor and sell their wares there, or their services. So it's really cool to watch those transformations from year to year. And because this is your third one, you know, I saw some last year. I expect to see more this year from people who came to that very first one that you had and have been building ever since then.
Yeah.
So guys, it's at exitandbuildlandsummit.com. If you want to grab a ticket, it will redirect you to the event registration page. Definitely check it out, guys. Any last words before we sign off?
Nope. Just join us. It'll be a lot of fun. You won't regret it.
Yeah, we're going to have an amazing time. We hope to see you there in person. Central Texas is a magical place. We didn't mention this, but there are also farm tours that you can check out the day before, the day after. So if you're trying to figure out where to live and you're not really sure the most free area or where the best places for gardening and permaculture, we are going to actually see permaculture properties in practice, and you can get a feel for, you know, how much food production, and really seeing it firsthand is also, I think, really inspiring. So,
and the 3 farm to table meals at the conference, this food for the meals will be sourced from the farms people tour on day 1 and day 5. I think that's really cool.
That is really cool. I'm sure that wasn't hard work at all either. Anyway, guys, great. I look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you for giving me an hour of your time this close to the event. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
we're
Nicole.
so happy you're coming too, Nicole.
Yep. Triple speaker.